Yeah. All right, cool. So this is Benchmarking Your Security Team. I'm Peter Schawacker, subtitle From Credentials to Capabilities. This is about one of the segments of Aramis, but it's also about the experience that I've been having since, I don't know, a long time ago. Um, intro, introduce use the chat for networking, connect with people, make friends. It's one of the reasons we do this. Hey, Jeffrey, awesome. I love seeing familiar names here. Um, and yeah, forgive me if there is a 20-second lag. I'll be responding late. So yeah, I've been doing this for about 3 decades. I think I need to change this to 29 years now, but somehow 28 feels a little less old. I've been in cyber since the late 90s. And in my first cyber job, I hired people. I built a SOC at Citi. I wasn't special. I was available and eager and curious and willing to do anything that was necessary in order to get the work done. And that included hiring a 24-hour team. I was there for the Euro changeover in 99 and or 98 to 99, and then Y2K. I covered night shifts for both of those. It was an interesting time, and I've been consulting, building team, managing teams. I've been a CISO. I'm not bragging; I wasn't good at it, but I learned an awful lot in the process. I also built the SIM practice at Optiv. I was the 8th SIM consultant in the team and was handed the reins in a reorganization and became practice manager. And I built that team from 8 to about 49, depending on where you draw the line. That was a professional services team that also provided support to the MSS group. So I learned a lot about how to find people, how to staff, how to work with recruiters. Our internal recruiters were good, right? They weren't quite as capable as niche recruiters, but they were doing their level best to serve a lot of different interests in the company and outside the company. They're also doing staffing. There was a dedicated staffing team that I worked with quite a lot. And so I learned how to work with those folks and the perspective and experience that they have. And I also went outside the company because I just needed to grow faster. I didn't like the requirement that we use certain, this is pre-AI, but even then we're using video-based interviewing, which I considered a filter for dignity. I still do, even though they've gotten better. But it's still not the way I like to do things. I want to get, people with people. So I hired some external recruiters, and some of them are duds, but a couple of them were really great. One, I actually got her start. I was her first client. Had to teach her how to do an invoice and say, like, don't use invoice number 1. It doesn't look good. Like, come up with another number. It was that kind of thing. And she was scrappy as hell. And she used like a regular LinkedIn account, not LinkedIn Sales Navigator or any of that stuff. No ATS, none of it. It was LinkedIn and a spreadsheet and a phone and an email. And she made it work, and she did a good job. I also work with a really superb, real professional guy named Tom Shaw. I will name names of the people I liked, and I admired and respected Tom. He actually had tried to recruit me for like 10 years and never worked out. Either I wasn't available or wasn't a good fit at the time, but we built a pretty good relationship. And so I brought him in with his then firm, which was later, I think he started another one, sold it to somebody. But what Tom would do was not just razzle dazzle me, not just like pound my phone all the time, but he did research and he knew the market in cyber. He knew it locally. He knew it around the United States. He knew what other divisions were doing. He knew my pipeline in some respects better than I did. And so he might call me and say, "You're going to need 2 more Splunkers." I'm like, "How do you know that?" He's like, "Just trust me. I talk to people. I talk to your people." And I realized just how valuable a true kind of consultative talent agent could be. And so, as opposed to what we see these days, which is AI spray and pray, high volume, high speed, low quality. So, um, that's the history. These days, I operate a thing called Nearshore Cyber. Laura and I still run it. It's a staff and recruiting agency. I'm not going to turn this into a commercial for either of these, although there will be kind of a pitch at the end because I need to start educating people on what Aramis is. But in terms of Nearshore Cyber, staff and recruiting, mostly out of Mexico, Philippines, little APAC. We like to do Greece. There hasn't been much lately, but it's good for GDPR, and our clients are mostly in the States. Now some Tokyo and some domestic business in Mexico, and we do some GRC. To make that work, we operate a community with about 2,200 people. Now we track about 18,000 people, which for a staffing and recruiting agency is tiny. Most agencies track like 500,000. We track about 18,000, of whom about 50 we really like. It is very, very hard to find reliable talent, and finding the people who are really good means finding people who are working. But that's our specialty, and we keep track with the market by supporting it. I created Aramis originally for two purposes. One is we needed to go faster. I'm slow. I am just slow. Whereas a typical recruiting agency will turn around resumes in like 4 hours. I typically will have a couple that I really like that I know are sort of for people who are available and whom I trust and I'll be proud of. But a lot of times it's just a question of fit. And maybe I don't have somebody who's got exactly the right skill set. And so I have to go out to market, and that can take, 2 to 6 weeks. Now that's for me. When it comes to the offer, in some places people have to give a month's notice or longer. And so the process is very, very slow. And we're small, right? I rely on a lot on AI and automation for getting the word out. But when it comes to screening people, I don't use any of that stuff. It's keyword searches, and in fact, that's pretty effective. But how do you get the data in which to do with which to do those keyword searches is a thing. And I realized I needed a way to do that, so I conceived of Aramis as an automation platform for us. I also had clients that I needed to do better discovery work for. I needed to understand their requirements. We'll talk about job descriptions and the mess that those are in a minute. But I needed a way to structure discovery, and I had a couple of clients who asked us to dig into what they had because we were having trouble finding talent. And I started building the tooling to do what we call in the recruiting industry is called human capital assessment. I had also been thinking a long time about NIST NICE, which I'm going to talk about as well. So where we are today is the cyber labor market sucks. We tend to rely on credentials in the form of degrees in terms of certifications. I really like certs. I used to collect them when they were cheap. I took the Security Plus when it was in beta, and it was great, and it was terrific preparation for the CISSP. I paid for it later, and it cost $99. So I took it twice. I did the same thing with the Project Plus, and there was a thing called the Project Plus at one time. It was pretty good. It was like a junior CAPM from the PMI. I have a PMP. I have Linux certs and Solaris certs and the Microsoft. I was an MCSE plus I. Some of you may remember that from like 20 years ago. But one of the things that was different then was we did the work and then we did the cert. Very few people were doing the cert so that they could get the job. Like that just wasn't, people did it, but it was understood that that's not what you're supposed to do. This is why the CISSP, like you can take the test anytime you want, but you're not going to get certified until you have an endorsement from a CISSP in good standing, and you have 5 years or 7 years. In my case, I don't have a degree. Like I come from a family of academics and musicians. My dad was a full professor. My mom was a music librarian at a different university. I grew up around universities, but I just like, me doing work for free, that people in way to build things that people don't actually care about, just doesn't work for me. So I was exposed to universities, but didn't do the degree. But I understood what that world was about, and what the university system is supposed to do. And it wasn't supposed to be job training. Job training was supposed to come from like what I did was like New Horizons Computer Learning Center, where I learned things like how to use Microsoft Access. Schools like that, I think, are fantastic. They're cost efficient. There's one in New York City or on near Penn Station. I forgot the name of it, but anyone wants to know. Great classes there, really reasonably priced. Online, in person. I like in person. Those are terrific, but they don't result in credentials that align to a job for the most part. Now, there's some exceptions. The OSCP is for pen testers, red teamers. It's excellent. The OSCP requires that you write a deliverable. I think they may, and somebody correct me if catch me up on this. I think they might require that you present it now. TCM has an equivalent that apparently is quite rigorous, and they do have you present the deliverable. Hard to scale that stuff, right? So in any event, what you get with the TCM pen testing cert, which I forgot the name of, PPNT or something, with the other is something aligned specifically to a job. But I'm often asked, like, I got my CISSP, what job can it get me? And the answer is it doesn't. All it can do is avoid the filter out. But a lot of people see the CISSP as just basics. And it is. Like, it's really good foundation. It's excellent. I did it in 2002. I studied 9 months for it. I already had a decent handle on security from having worked in it a couple of years. Before City, I'd done help desk. I'd worked at Earthlink. I was an early employee at Earthlink, the one of the early dial-up MS or ISPs and hosting providers. Before that, I had customer service. So, like, I kind of knew stuff. I wasn't a kid anymore. But I still needed to fill in the gaps. Like, I didn't know anything about cryptography. And by the time I took the exam, I knew what an S box was. I didn't know anything about the formal security models, which are not to be, to be shunted aside. They're important. They're useful. And in the end, having the CISSP made me feel better. It was as much an ego hit and as much a way of sort of encouraging myself that I wasn't an idiot as anything else. And sure enough, like, my wife at the time, my first wife, got tired of me hearing me complain about the fact that I didn't know anything. And she took the stack of certifications that I had in a file folder, went out and bought like a box of dollar frames at the dollar store and put them up on the wall behind me, just so that I could prove to myself that I'm not a moron. It didn't work. I still feel like a moron, but that's kind of how security is. I let the insecurity drive me to work harder, but it still wasn't about a particular job. So we have all these certs that don't actually align to jobs. They are not structured in a way that is portable or flexible. So the CISSP exam and the other IC squared exams are great. Like, the questions are stellar. That's actually when I started thinking about how to write the questions for Aramis, I knew that was the standard I wanted to work toward. Same goes for ISACA. CISA gets you fairly close to an auto assurance GRC job, but it doesn't get you all the way there. But the questions are excellent, but they all have different frameworks behind them. NIST NICE, I always forget what NICE means. Look it up. You have the internet too. Is a taxonomy and a framework that the National Institutes of Standards and Technologies, the people brought us the CSF, SP 853, all that good stuff. It's what they created to define what cybersecurity jobs are. A word of caution, there's a NIST NICE version 2, and then there's NIST NICE version 2.1. In the shift from 2 to 2.1, they dropped 11 of the workgroup roles because they pertain really to, like, DOD. I won't call it the Department of War. That requires an act of Congress. That hasn't happened yet. It required they pertain to the DOD and intelligence community. So they took 11 of them out. So instead of being 52, which was cool because there are 52 cards in the deck and one is the ace of spades. Yeah. It's 41. All right. So they thinned it out. So now it works for civilian and private sector. So NIST NICE has basically a collection of tasks, knowledge areas, skills, and it allows us to describe what a job is. it doesn't get you exactly to the job. Like there isn't a NIST NICE job, which has created some challenges for us that we worked out. But I'll talk about in a little bit. So we have certifications that aren't actually aligned to a job and don't make it possible for hiring managers to know if the holder of the certification can do the work. We have people who are spending on these things, and the CISSP last time I checked was like, I think it's like $749 or $750 for the exam. That assumes you don't buy the like pass or the fail insurance. That leaves out all the training and the boot camps and the books and all that stuff. Sean Harris, unfortunately, is not around, so we don't have a book for the current version. There's some good books, but they weren't as good as Sean. I think the authors of the new ones would agree that her stuff was some of the best you could find on any topic. But anyway, what I know, our awareness of the problem and living on all three areas of the field, and I'll talk about this what those are. What that taught us was that, you know, when we look at job descriptions, we see what amount to badly written brochures. They're ad copy. They're not specs. We look at resumes and we find that they are also basically brochures. Like they're sort of structured, right? They're bullets and things like that. LinkedIn profiles are better structured, but resumes are usually a mess. And if you ask an AI to revise your resume and you don't tell it to not make stuff up, it will make stuff up. This is why you get these strange percentages for individual contributors. They don't make sense, right? So the whole thing is a mess. What we have now is basically a system where the people who can get work are not necessarily the most qualified or the best qualified. When I say qualified, I have to qualify the term qualified. Qualifications can include certifications, but there's something missing, which is what we're trying to build with Aramis, a qualifying document, which enables a hiring manager or an employer to define a job using the NIST NICE framework and to be able to align that precisely with what a job seeker or the talent has, and also for the people in the middle, for the recruiters to be able to make sense of it. So resumes these days are hard to read. They're usually way too long. They used to include typos all the time, which is actually kind of handy because one of the skills that I look for is writing and proofreading, which goes with writing. And if there are typos, I know that they probably don't proofread because everybody's using AI now. Typos are really rare. In fact, when I see one, I'm kind of like relieved because I know like definitely, well, not definitely, because people are starting to introduce typos to make it look like the AI didn't do it. I actually, by the way, I don't care if an AI writes something. Everything that I write these days starts with me making an outline and making notes and having a conversation with Claude. And then I have like a style guide that writes things in a style that I like to read. It's good. If it's good, I don't care how it gets produced. It's mine, it's still my ideas. And if it's your background, it's your experience, as long as it makes sense to me, great. I expect people to use AI. If you're not using AI, like, that's another conversation. We had a whole user group around that last year. So resumes typically are designed in such a way that they're basically laden with keywords, usually a lot of irrelevant stuff. Like nobody cares that you know DHCP and you probably don't anyway. Like I can't tell you how many people who have DHCP in their resume, and I ask them like, what is the protocol that assigns IP addresses on a LAN? And they can't tell me that it's DHCP, even though it's on the resume. So like nobody believes them. Most people are terrible at interviewing. I'm pretty good at interviewing because I talk all the time. Like, you know, for this thing, I put some slides together and I thought about it. And, you know, basically I'm having the same one-way conversation with the screen with you guys watching that I have all the time. Like every day I am practicing presenting, interviewing, being interviewed. And there's some people who are really good at it. The people who are best at interviewing do a lot of interviews, mostly because they can't keep a job. So the people who are best at job hunting are the ones who need a new job more often. And so there's this kind of conflict between the ability to pass an interview and the ability to do the job. A lot of the time it has nothing to do with tech. Usually it's like, can't show up, can't get along with people. But, interviewing skills require practice that people don't get, especially if they're good. Again, like a note on the CISSP, it's mostly about recall. When I did it, I internalized the content because by one standard, I overstudied. When I took it, was proctored in a room, I think at USC, and I think there were like 100 people in the room, and I was the first person to finish. And I'm looking at my Scantron, and I look up, I'm like, no one else is done, and I'm not fast at anything. Like, I'm slow as my thing. It works for me. But this time I was the first, and I thought, I must have effed this up. There's no way I'm done. And I looked at both sides, and I looked at the book. I'm like, I overstudied. I overstudied like mad. But I also knew right then and there that I was gonna retain that information, or a lot of it, I should say. I don't remember all of it. I was gonna retain it, and I internalized it, and I got it. I also taught it later. I co-led a CISSP user group in Ottawa around 2009 with the ISSA chapter, back to when it was under that, and we ran CISSP study group, two actually in parallel, one in English, one in Spanish, under Nearshore Cyber a couple of years ago. Made some great friends, found some terrific leaders, and gave some opportunities for people to learn. And I taught some of that. Mine was English. But it was the reworking of the information and not the certification that mattered. Now, how do we actually, in the absence of frameworks, in the absence of objective criteria, hire? Well, we do it on gut. And this is why one of the reasons that we wind up with so many interviews. Now, with Nearshore Cyber clients, again, this is not an over pitch, but we're proud of what we do. I interview a ton of people. I actually still do tech interviews, which recruiters are not supposed to do, but I do them because I'm too old, I'm too small, I'm too proud to screw up too often. And that means I need to talk to people, and I need to talk to them in depth. I also happen to know the material a lot, sometimes better than the client does. I used to know it better. I'm drifting, right? It's been a while since I actually did cyber all the time. But I want to be able to provide like one candidate, and like that's the one. I usually provide three for good measure, because if you only provide one, then people feel like you haven't done your sort of adequate job. But realistically, like the first one you get, that's probably the one, and then the others are backups, right? So I was able to do that because I know the material. Clients tend to trust me after they've had a conversation about the stuff. They know that we tend to focus on, or to target MDR divisions of MSSPs or MDR companies or service providers. So I know that business really well. So it's like really easy for me to screen talent. But what if you don't have that? What if you need to do more than 3 interviews? Well, if the recruiter is a typical recruiter, they're smiling, dialing, and they get you on the phone. They get a whiff of a job rack, or they know that you have one posted, and they ask, could I hunt for that? Now, there are probably like 10, 20 other agencies looking for people for you, supposedly. And they're all looking at the same time with the same job descriptions, or maybe slightly modified. But it's kind of like, I heard that the other day on a podcast, it's like throwing meat on a beach and all the dogs come running. And one or two one will eat, and the rest of them starve. And so what you have to do is you have to be fast, kind of like the dog that gets the meat. And so you go to your ATS and you filter for some of the criteria, usually certifications and product names, and you send candidate profiles over. Candidates who probably you've never spoken to before, if you're when I say you, I mean the recruiter. Or you go out to LinkedIn and you take the LinkedIn profiles, you transfer them to your branded letterhead, and you send them over to the candidate or the client. And the client, maybe it's a hiring manager, maybe it's an internal recruiter, says, "Boy, you're fast. You're our recruiter, right? Or let's look at these." First candidate goes over, not available. Next one goes over, not really qualified, lying on their CV. Next one comes over. Oh, we interviewed them before. No, right? Next, and so what the poor hiring manager gets is, I've heard people say, like, I got 30 resumes, none of them were good. Like, very common for that to happen. I heard that early on in Nearshore Cyber 4 years ago from actually our first client. Like, I got 30 resumes, 31 resumes, help, right? And we sent him one. And he was like, oh yeah, this is it. And he knew it was it because we sent a recording of my tech interview. So he could watch the tech interview and go like, okay, now I just need to do a social. If you don't have that, doing this the old way, you have to go through a lot of interviews, not just so that you can kind of qualify the capabilities, but also because if you get it wrong, your job is at risk as a hiring manager. The people who have the most difficulty in this market finding work are middle managers. So the security manager, the security director, maybe deputy CISO, although like deputy CISOs are in high demand. It's like it's a good job right now. But if you're in middle management, or if you're a recruiter, internal recruiter, and you're let go, you're going to spend a long time on the market, like more than a year in some cases. It's horrible. Now, sometimes it's because middle managers tend not to be very good at job hunting, especially if they're good at if they've been in the job for a while, because they don't get practice, or they let their training go. A lot of middle managers in cyber stop learning about tech. A lot of them actually don't like technology, which is another problem. But they lose their skills. They don't stay in the game. They don't work their networks, and they land on the street and they can't find work. If you have enough bad hires, that's what you get. You're on the street. And so what do? You cover yourself by arranging more interviews and more interviews and more interviews. So it's like, maybe you as a hiring manager do it, or maybe one of your underlings does it because you're too busy dealing with a team that's burnt out and overworked, right? So you're not getting the first cut. You interview the person, you have 20 minutes. You don't look at the resume because you don't have time and you can't find it. And if you did have the resume, you probably wouldn't get anything out of it anyway, because resumes are usually bad, right? Then let me put you in front of the team. Let's do a team interview. And what does that turn into? A grilling session, a gotcha exercise with 3-4 smart people, maybe somebody who doesn't even come from the security team, doesn't even know what it's about. A lot of you have been through this, where you're in an interview with somebody and they join the call and they're like, what's this about? You have to tell them, I'm interviewing for such and such job. And they're like, oh, I'm from storage. I'm not sure why I'm here. Now, they might do their level best to go through the motions, but in the end, what you wind up with is a lot of low value interviews, simply so that the hiring manager can say everybody was consulted, right? And that's not a terrible strategy if you were in a defensive position as a professional, right? If you're trying to do good politics. The other problem is, like, people don't know where to go from there. The learning development has to start from somewhere. And much of the time, we don't really know what our employees have, right? We don't know what their skills are really. We have vendor certs, particularly if you are in the service provider space. You pursue vendor certifications because your partners require it for you to maintain like silver status or platinum status and have discounts and all that stuff. You have to have a certain number of people with certain certifications, and usually it's checkbox, but it's something, right? And some of the certification exams are really pretty challenging. They also expire much of the time, or you have to update them periodically. So those are good. But if in the absence of that, like, how do you build on top of CISSP skills? How do you build on top of Security Plus skills? How do you build on top of CISA Plus skills? How do you build on top of AZ whatever skills? There isn't a unified baseline, so you don't know where you're starting from. So the learning development path a lot of the time turns into, here's a LinkedIn learning license. Here's your free Udemy course. Go forth and do courses in your free time. But you don't know where you are and you don't know where you're going. So professional development suffers when you don't have a framework and when you haven't assessed people. If you want to promote somebody or demote somebody, if you want to provide performance incentive bonuses based on learning and development, there's no way to do that if you don't have a baseline. And then if somebody were to say to you, like, can your people do the work? Well, you have tooling. Maybe you have an inventory if you're lucky. maybe you've done your compliance stuff, and you even have some sense of what your technical controls are and what your tools are. How do you know what's in your people's heads? What do you know what their fingers can do? So we're working on gut way too much of the time, and like the slide says, intuition is not audible, and I don't just mean by third parties or regulators, but I mean by you. Current approach. I have a client that I've been working with on filling some recs since May of last year. Part of it is internal process. Part of it is, and this is not uncommon. Like if you're that client who's like, don't worry, you're not the only one. Part of it is you're busy, you're overloaded, you finally get the budget, but you start working, you start recruiting, start talking to people, you put recruiters to work. They get people, they submit them to you, and then you're told, oh, we have the budget, but we don't have the headcount approval. Or we got approval for the headcount, but we didn't get enough budget. We got budget for this person and that person, but not that other person. And because you're not defining the roles that you need to fill in a structured way, you don't know, you don't have a sense of what you're hiring, how it can be sort of divided up. The cost of training to hire people, like, I don't know, $5,000 is pretty low. That assumes 2 instructor-led training courses virtual. Now that's really, really low. Like that's on the conservative end, depending on how you think of the word conservative. Last time I priced out sans GCIH, because I was doing IR a fair amount a few years ago, and I thought I should actually take a class because I just sort of figured it out. To take that course, to fly from Oaxaca, Mexico to Dallas, to stay at the Marriott, to do the class in person, which I think is really the only way to do this kind of training and have the information stick, it's going to cost $11,000. $9,000 if I didn't include the travel, if I did it online. But we all know, right, actually breaking away and staying broken away from the work to do training is not that easy. So crazy money gets spent on this. And in the end, like, what do you get? Okay, GCIH. What does GCIH give you in terms of a framework and what you need? So let's talk about the NIST NICE Framework. I know I'm pitching a product here, right? Aramis is a platform that is intended to create a new kind of talent marketplace. We are in a beta period that is ending at midnight on Friday. Right now, you can get it for free. So if you want it, you send me a note. Actually, send Laura a note because I'm in LinkedIn jail. Send it to her, and we'll hook you up with the beta coupon. But it's going to expire on midnight on Friday. You can register for this stuff for what's called Aramis Assert and Aramis Challenge, which are the main parts of it, and then take it later. But you got to do it before then. We're going to start charging for it. But you can do this yourself. Like you can take the NIST NICE framework and run it past your job descriptions, upload your technology roadmap, whatever, and create better job descriptions that are based on the NIST NICE framework, and you can advertise based on that. There's nothing that says you can't put a NIST NICE breakdown in a JD and post it to LinkedIn or Indeed or wherever people advertise for jobs, or on your website. You can do that. That's what I did. It's something we do as part of the product, right? It's also something we do as part of the discovery for clients. But you can do it yourself, right? And I would rather, if you don't have the dough or the time, I'd rather that you do it the right way, what I think is the right way, and get better results, than have you wait and not do it just because you don't have the budget. If you want me to do it, cool. I like money. NIST NICE framework consists of tasks, like what are the things that someone can do? Knowledge, do they have the principles, do they have the theory? And then skills, NIST NICE defines, and I sort of reinterpret this as being able to apply knowledge to situations they haven't seen before, which is kind of the definition of intelligence. There are over 2,000 NIST NICE TKSs that align to work group roles. They're grouped into 41 of those work group roles. Remember, at the beginning, if you were here when we got started, there used to be 52, it's down to 41. 2,148 TKSs in the 2.1 version. They do not map to jobs. What we did was we looked at the 10 most commonly advertised jobs in the United States, because, I'm a recruiter, And I wanted to understand those and be able to work with those. Again, this was when this was internal. And I created a mapping between what is commonly advertised in terms of job skills and also things like publications that people made about like, what do you need to do to be a security analyst, or what's necessary to become a whatever. It was an interesting list. Number 1 was cybersecurity engineer. Number 7, cybersecurity and privacy attorney. Who knew, right? It's actually pretty commonly advertised, or it was 4 months ago. And so we started with that. Fun thing happened. People came around asking for things like vulnerability analyst, SOC engineer, which I call detection engineer because it's the 21st century. They asked for GRC analyst. The top 5 most commonly sought jobs do not align with the top 10 most commonly advertised jobs, which should tell you something about the imbalance in the market. But we started with the top 10. Then we added the next 4 most commonly sought jobs. The market's changing. Like, I think GRC is coming back this year, toward the end of the year. I think it's actually going to be hot again, and we'll get hotter thanks to AI and the demands for assurance and GRC and junk like that. And vulnerability management is a perennial thing. But we have 15 now. I added detection engineer actually last night, so that's available now. Those are the roles. Security engineer is the top of the list. Oh, actually, sorry. Cyber privacy attorney was toward the bottom list. So what we want to be able to do is look across people and TKSs and rate them in terms of what we have kind of like a blunt instrument that we call a trust score. I'm not wild about the idea of scores for people. I think it sort of demeans people's humanity. It sounds too much like credit score, which really hurts right now because we're bootstrapped, and you know what that means. But we may do away with the trust score thing, because the reality is that if someone has gaps in 90% of the areas that you need for, say, security analyst, given the normal definition, but you as an employer only care about a certain 10%, and there's a candidate who nails that 10%, who cares if their trust score is 10? Doesn't matter. So we're probably going to drop the trust score, even though a lot of people say they like it. I don't know. I'm not going for it. One of the interesting things that we found in the beta, and by the way, we are using this for recruiting. If I reach out to somebody for recruiting, I do not charge them. It wouldn't make any sense for me to like charge someone for a job where I'm going to make a commission on a retail basis. Now, we are figuring out a channel thing later. It gets complicated to like basically tread this line ethically and morally, but we're going to tread it. But anyway, we've had about a little over 500 people go through Assert Challenge, the first 2 phases. In Assert, it's called Assert because you assert your skills. So across those 41 things, you say on a scale of 0 to 5, 0 being I've never heard of it, 5 being I invented it, I'm a 3 on this one. And on that one, I'm a 4. And on this other one, I'm a 1, right? So you're going to assess yourself according to those 41. And then you do challenges. It's called challenge because you are challenging your assumptions, because that is a pretty sizable, objective, multiple choice scenario based thing with 300 questions per job. And they don't repeat between jobs. It's like for that job, which means you have a lot of questions. When we compare those, what I find is that people actually underestimate their themselves in Assert. They do when we look at the results of the objective assessment, we find that people are actually selling themselves short. And so one of the things that we expect this will do, 2 things really, 3. One is be able to communicate to employers what you know based on the objective assessment. Another is, and in fine detail, but also summarize those 41 areas in 11 categories. The other thing I want people to be able to do is, imposter syndrome is stupid. It's not a syndrome. Syndrome is a medical term. Insecurity is not a medical condition usually. In fact, I can't think of a case where it would be. If you're thinking of imposter syndrome, you're just insecure. The cure for insecurity is certainty. The path to certainty is objective assessment of what you know and what you don't know, what your skills are and what your skills aren't. And then it is, if you still feel insecure because you see your gaps, great, as long as you know what those gaps are. So the third thing that we want people to have is to have a precise understanding of what their gaps are. And if they have significant gaps in terms of the job they want for 5% of the things we test, I want you to focus just on that 5%. This is one of the differences between the sort of scattershot approach that technology training tends to sell you, where you spend $11,000 to fill in, $500 of gap, right? We need to be able to focus a lot better and be able to and spend our time and our money and our attention and our emotional whatever filling just what we need to, and go like, on those areas I'm crushing it. I don't need to touch about this. Just maintain, right? So we want to be able to put employers in a position where they can see exactly what they need, what's available in a given candidate, what's available in the market, and sometimes do things like split up a job. Sometimes be able to say, you know what? I got 9 Splunk people. Why am I recruiting another one? I really need somebody who knows CI/CD and identity. That's what we're going to recruit, right? So we need a system that is faster, more efficient, less trouble, fewer interviews, right? That doesn't require this bizarre flooding of applications and all the follow-up that goes with it, and the heartache, and the for people who are looking for work, the lost income, right? So that's what we're trying to work on. Oh yeah, I kind of did that. Here we go. It's actually not 717. I looked at the numbers again, like 200 of those are test users. So it's like 500. So apologies. But we've gotten a lot of stuff through this. This is okay, pricing's changing. It was free. I was going to charge $9 for Assert. I'm taking it down to $3. $6 does not move the needle for me. Why are we charging anything at all for it? Bots. Really, that's it. It's bots. And if you can't put a credit card down and charge $3, you aren't committed to a career in anything. We're going to provide a discount on Challenge of $100, which will take it down to $99. That starts on Saturday morning. By the way, some people have actually already paid for the thing. Like, we gave out a discount coupon. We're still giving it out. That would get you a certain challenge for free. And there are people who just paid because they believe in it. It's pretty neat. And if you're one of those, thank you. But anyway, it's going to be $99, and that will give you that assessment. Reconcile is the third part. What that gets you is in about 45 minutes to an hour with a coach. Right now, that's me. I have a couple of people lined up to help us out when I can't scale anymore. We're also producing a revised resume, which is structured according to the NIST NICE, but it has like, here's your history, here are your whatever certifications, stuff like that. But then in the appendix provides the NIST NICE mapping, and also a little guidance where we can tell you how to take a job description and swizzle it together with your JD and provide a mapping between what the job description says and what you've got, right? So you can put that in front of a hiring manager and say, before we get into this, this is how I see me in terms of the skills you need. Now, and that's not the whole interview. There's a lot more that goes into this, particularly in terms of problem solving, social, likability is a thing, right? And just like, do you like these people? Like, can't really screen for that easily without getting creepy. We're also, while we're at it, produce text for a LinkedIn profile, because LLMs are actually really great at resumes and LinkedIn profiles with a couple little prompty things. If you want to see how that works, I did a webinar on it was called how to get around the cybersecurity experience requirement. And it's on our Circle platform on the Nearshore Cyber community. I did it last February, so you can still get that, and it'll tell you exactly how to do this. Again, like, none of this stuff is rocket surgery. I've been doing it by hand for years. Aramis is just the way to automate and scale it, because we want to be able to help more people than we have. And we need to be able to move big numbers in order to create network effects so that we can create a cultural change in the industry, which I'm going to talk about in other sessions. The other thing that we're generating now is learning development plans. This, I think, is perhaps the most valuable part of the whole thing. I mentioned that, if your gaps are 10% of the skills that are required for a job as commonly defined, why go over the same old ground? How many times have you gone to technical training and sat there and maybe you get a nugget or two, but you spent a week for an hour of content that you really needed? Just do the hour. Don't buy the book or don't read the whole book when all you need is 3 paragraphs scattered throughout that book. Find your gaps and target those. But how do you do that? Well, you can Google. You can find resources on your own. You can schedule it. What we're doing is producing a learning development roadmap. In Challenge, you now get a draft L&D roadmap. In Reconcile, the third part, we take the transcript of that conversation, mix it up with your resume, your link, export of your LinkedIn profile, the data from your challenge assessment, from your cert assessment or self-assessment, and also ask some questions in a questionnaire like, what is your learning style? How do you like to learn? How much time do you want to put into this on any given week? And stuff like that, and create a custom tailored learning development plan. We'll review that in the draft and in the Reconcile interview. That's part of what we talk about there. And then you can use that and know how long it should take, given appropriate investment, to get your gaps filled. At present, we are only including free resources. Why? Because actually the free stuff tends to be better. Now there's some exceptions, like the stuff that Anti-Siphon produces, like John Strand, marvelous. John Hammond, Just Hacking Training, excellent. There are like Udemy courses that are really great, right, for $9, but we're limiting this at the moment to free stuff. We will probably add partner things in later and say, like, this will cost you money. Do you want to go faster? Because sometimes paying for the stuff will get you through the gaps more quickly. But for now, it's like all free stuff. What it means is that to go through this process is $3 plus $99 plus $199 until the end of next month. These are not list prices. We're going to raise them because I need to make money. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. What this refers to is a thing that we call build. If you go to projectaramis.com, you'll see Insight, Orchestrate, Build. Orchestrate is a channel we want to build through recruiters. Build is basically, you might have heard human capital study. That's what this is. This is how it works. As of right now, if you use beta 100, that will get you Assert and Challenge for free until midnight on Friday or tomorrow, right? Sign up now, do the assessments later. Challenge will take you 2 to 4 hours, right? It's just what it takes, right? Good news is it's not past just an assessment. And so if whatever your score is there to give you insight, hence insight. We're trying to figure out a way to make it less difficult. Now you can do it at present, you can do it in 4 chunks of up to 2 hours each. That's the limit. It takes most people about an hour to 2 hours, about an hour per session. So you pick a role. It's actually now one of 15. It's out of date as of this morning. Do the challenge assessment, get your results, and okay. So Andy asked about 5K per head per training. That's like assuming that like you're going to do 2 weeks of training a year, and that it's online, not in person. Some of that stuff has gone up by a lot, but like 5K is pretty typical for corporate training. Now there are options available, like Anti-Siphon does, pay what you can. A lot of their stuff is free. So much of what Nearshore Cyber has been doing for the past couple of years is also free, and which is awesome. But frankly, it's not necessarily efficient. Here, let me put my face back on the screen. Stop sharing. Okay, there's my face. So it's kind of an average. If you want to concentrate, you're going to be paying for travel because you're going to go someplace. If you're going to do SANS, unless you're funded by somebody with really deep pockets who really believes in you, you're spending $9,000 to $11,000, right? And the SAN stuff is excellent. It leaves a lot to be desired in terms of pedagogy, like actual retention. I've done GCIA twice over the years, and I've dealt with a lot of people who did like cheap pen and junk like that. I find it really difficult to retain that stuff, but it's not my learning style, right? But anyway, what else? Yeah, anti-7's often, and again, like the John Hammond's just hacking training stuff, I love. He charges for some of it, not all of it. How do we find out? Oh, you get the results like immediately. It used to take 5 seconds. I squeeze it down to 1, I think. A lot of comments, not many questions. All right, I'm going to call it here. If you are looking for people, cyber people, Peter at nearshorecyber.com.mx. Do not reach out to me on LinkedIn until Tuesday when they let me back in. We have a Facebook page now. We still have the Nearshore Cyber community, and Aramis has a Discord. I am looking for co-founders. We are going to go looking for VC. This is going to take serious advertising money, and I vibe coded my ass off to build what we have so far. It might break. It's also why I had a long beta period. But I'm looking for CTO. So CTO and a CEO, CFO, and then we're gonna take some Silicon Valley money and build this up. With that, I'm gonna let you guys go. Thanks so much.